Well, I've just gotten through a couple of weeks ago with a 45 or 46-day battle of Ingram Park, I call it. That's the park there in Birmingham where we stopped Martin Luther King. And I mean, ladies and gentlemen, we had that nigger whipped.
FBI in the South, rather than stopping Klan violence, would in fact allow it to happen.
Mr. Schwartz, but that was the problem with the Birmingham Police Department. What about the FBI? Did you ever discuss with them why they didn't do anything? Mr. Rowe, yes, sir. I was told by the FBI. They said, well, who the hell are we going to report it to? The police department was involved in it. The police department helped set it up. We are an investigating agency, not an enforcement agency. All we do is gather information. This was my answer. Mr. Schwartz. Mr. Rowe, were you an informant in the Klan? Mr. Rowe. Yes, I was. Schwartz. From when to when? Rowe. From approximately 1959 to 1965. Schwartz. In 1965, did you surface in connection with the murder case? Rowe. Yes, I did. Schwartz. Whose murder and what role did you play in that case? Rowe. I was in the automobile the evening that Mrs. Viola Louiso was killed by a Klansman.
At the high point of FBI involvement with the Klan, 1 out of 4 Klansmen was an FBI agent. So a lot, if not all, of Ku Klux Klan policy and actions were being directed by or acquiesced in by the FBI. And this led to the FBI and its COINTELPRO program and its other racially oriented programs actually being implicated in and instigating crimes, civil rights crimes, murders and such things. The Birmingham church bombing, the assassination of the civil rights workers, the Freedom Riders, Viola Louiso, for one, the people in Philadelphia, Mississippi. That Rowe was involved in all of this, and he was an FBI informant. He's the one who pulled the trigger, or at least fired a shot in one of the incidents. He was involved in the bombing, and again, connected to the FBI.
Hoover always felt that civil rights was a threat to the country. So not threat to the country. I don't believe he was a threat to the social order, to the order of things. And therefore, as the protector of not only, quote, the country, which he didn't believe that we were part of, but the order of things which he knew we weren't a part of, anything that threatened the order of things, he had a right to use tactics to destroy it.
There was an explanation for why our housing was bad, our education was poor, our political power was limited, and that explanation was that we were held as colonial subjects within the United States. It's not a perfect explanation. It's an analogy to situations in Africa and in Asia that we could see that fit us. Therefore, colonialism had been denounced by the United Nations, and people were entitled to their independence, and they were justified in breaking out of that type of control. That was the basic American history.
Police in our community couldn't possibly be there to protect our property because we own no property. They couldn't possibly be there to see that we receive the due process of law for the simple reason that the police themselves deny us the due process of law. And so it's very apparent that the police are only in our community, not for our security, but the security of the business owners in the community, and also to see that the status quo is kept intact.
Look, hey! You see that? You see, that's what caused it. You see that? Nothing but a 13-year-old kid. You see that? What are you guys standing here for? Be on a white man! Get in!
Police brutality remains as a major issue in the black community, and I'm sure in cities across the country. And probably will remain, because if you just examine what the police department is, it is the military arm of the establishment. So what do you expect of it? You expect it to protect the interests of the establishment.
when you talk about law and order, the very law and order that you talk about oppresses us. So therefore, we are for the extermination of that law and order. And you have shown us clearly that we can only do it by being armed.
The existentialist philosophers talk about the executioner-victim relationship that is always prevalent in most of the world today, especially the non-white world, where they're fighting for their liberation. He says there are executioners and there are victims. The executioners are self-imposed. The victims begin to fight and agitate for their liberation. They use all type of means to get their liberation. The revolutionary philosopher Frantz Fanon says that what happens is that the victim begins to agitate. He uses all types of means against his executioner in fighting for a position of equality. After he tries a number of means and they do not work, he then begins to imitate the means by which his executioner kept him down. That is usually through force and violence. He says, and then they begin to use it against them, breaking the one taboo that they've never been able to break, hitting back against their executioners, so that you ought not to be upset. If we are violent, the United States taught us very well how to be violent.
4 days of rioting, looting, and arson rocked the city of Detroit in the worst outbreak of urban racial violence this year. Entire blocks of homes become infernos. At least 30